In this episode of True Crime Black, we look at the case of a black woman who joined a group of white women for a birthday party. The next morning, she was found dead in their backyard. Almost immediately, the police wrote it off as a tragic accident. This led to an investigation that has been called into question countless times. Will we ever know the truth about what happened to her? With that said, let's get started. A black woman died more than 3 years ago. When her story broke, every avenue and turn was marked with missing pieces. Despite the multiple attempts to piece together what led up to her death and investigators closing the case, her father said it's still a puzzle. A puzzle with far too many missing pieces. "This case is just beginning," her father said. "I have to know the truth." Two different law enforcement agencies did conduct an investigation into how the young woman ended up dead in her friend's backyard in November of 2018. Both agencies came to the same conclusion. They believe that she got drunk at a party and fell from a balcony after everyone went to sleep. According to toxicology reports, her blood alcohol level was 0.238, nearly 3 times the legal limit. She had traces of marijuana and alprazolam, an anxiety medication, in her system. From the start, her family and friends expressed concerns about how authorities handled the investigation. The police handling the case repeatedly told them it would all make sense once they had access to their reports. Now, those reports have come to light. This is the case of Tamla Horsford. Tamla Horsford was born in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in 1978. She lived there with her family until she moved to the Bronx in New York in 1989. While spending some time in Florida, Tamla met her eventual husband and they went on to have 5 sons together. Those who were close to Tamla Horsford remembered her fondly. She liked to laugh, to dance, and to have fun. The family would eventually move to Georgia due to her husband's career. That is where Tamla would eventually meet a group of mothers who would be there when her life came to an end. But did they have something to do with it? 40-year-old Tamla Horsford arrived at a party being held by her friends at around 8:30 p.m. in Cumming, Georgia. Before heading to the party, which was to be a birthday celebration from her friend Jean Myers, Tamla made dinner for her 5 sons and her husband. Myers had invited a group of mothers who she met through the local youth football league to have a sleepover. They were going to be drinking alcohol and she didn't want anyone to drink and drive. That night, Tamla arrived with a bottle of tequila and a bag containing her overnight necessities. She then changed into her white onesie pajamas and was ready to join the party. The party was being held on November 3, 2018. The original plan for the party was to have only women attend the party, but 2 men would end up sticking around that night. Myers's boyfriend Jose Barrera and Tom Smith, the husband of another woman who attended the party, both stayed that night and joined in the festivities. That would put the number of the group at 12 people, including Tamla Horsford. While the women drank, socialized, and watched the LSU-Alabama game upstairs, Barrera and Smith were watching football in Myers' basement. Throughout the night, Tamla would have to excuse herself to step outside and smoke a cigarette. Tamla was a habitual smoker and the only one at the party who needed to indulge in that habit. Tamla also reportedly had smoked marijuana that evening, but was asked to stop by Myers. According to Myers' own statement, she had teased Horsford during the conversation, calling her the female Bob Marley, and reminding her that Barrera worked as a pretrial officer and did not approve of her smoking the then illegal substance. The men would eventually come upstairs and join the party. Photographs and videos taken throughout the night show Tamla smiling and enjoying herself with the group. Then, the guests who weren't spending the night began to leave at around 11:30 p.m. Those who were spending the night began to get ready for bed. What follows is a series of accounts from the guests that night. According to the police interviews, Tamla Horsford remained awake after Myers and Barrera headed to bed around 1:30 a.m. Bridget Fuller, one of the other guests there, was the last person to see Tamla that night. While waiting for her husband to pick her up, she saw Tamla eating a bowl of gumbo. Tamla then told Fuller that she had planned to go outside and smoke a cigarette before finally heading to bed. Over the next 10 minutes, the home security system registered the back door opening, closing, and then opening again, for the last time, at 1:57 a.m. Then, at around 8:45 the next morning, Madeline Lombardi, Myers's aunt who also lived at the house, headed into the kitchen to make her morning cup of coffee. During her interview with the police, Lombardi described seeing something out of the corner of her eye through the window. In the backyard, she noticed a white dog print onesie. Tamla Horsford, who was wearing the onesie, was face down in the grass and motionless. Lombardi then headed upstairs to find Myers. Curiously, she told her that there is something wrong with your friend from the islands. Tamla was born in the Caribbean but had been living in the United States since the age of 11. Forsyth County Police got the call about Tamla Horsford just before 9 o'clock that morning. On the line, both Myers and Barrera gave an account of what was happening. "She's not moving one bit. She's not breathing. She's completely face down in the yard. She is stiff," Barrera said to the dispatcher. "She was drinking, and it looks like, I'm guessing maybe she fell off the balcony," Myers added. Tamla Horsford was pronounced dead at the scene, and her body was sent for an autopsy. Even before the report came back though, the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office began to present the theory that her death had been an accident. The case would stay open for almost 4 months, until the Sheriff's Office made its official determination on February 20, 2019. Their final determination came 2 weeks after the State of Georgia Medical Examiner provided their final report. Both reports highlighted the toxicology report, which tested positive for THC and clocked her blood alcohol content at 0.238, nearly 3 times the legal limit to drive. They believe the marijuana and alcohol contributed to her accidentally falling off the balcony. Barrera also said that he had found an unlit cigarette and lighter on the upper deck. Using all of that information, the investigators felt certain that Tamla went out for a cigarette sometime around 1:57 a.m. and accidentally fell to her death. When they closed the case, the department released the incident report and death investigation to the public. Those documents, though, didn't provide the answers that Tamla's family and friends were looking for. For some, they only caused more confusion. If Tamla was so easily disoriented because of her high blood alcohol content level, how was she in such control of herself throughout the night? There are statements from the other guests and videos from that night that don't paint the picture of a dangerously inebriated person. Then there is the question of the guests. How could a house full of people, some asleep for less than a half hour, not hear Horsford fall to her death right outside their windows? Could a 15 to 20 foot fall be the cause of not only death, but a dislocated wrist, broken neck, and laceration to her heart muscle? Why wasn't the scene preserved, evidence tested, or potential witnesses interviewed immediately? A lot of the scrutiny this case has faced starts with what some feel was a shoddy investigation from the beginning. For starters, potential evidence may have been compromised or missed due to the actions of the police upon arriving at the scene. The scene was never secured. Also, Barrera told investigators he touched the body, saying he moved Horsford's leg while trying to figure out if she was still alive. Barrera told the police during his interview that he found and moved the unlit cigarette and lighter on the deck before he saw the body. It should be noted that Barrera works in law enforcement, and one would think that he knew better than to disturb potential evidence. And since the police were already stuck on the belief that Tamla Horsford's death was an accident, none of that potential evidence was ever fingerprinted. Barrera also noted on the original 911 call that security cameras were installed and pointed at the backyard. However, the police found that the batteries were dead and the cameras did not record anything. During the autopsy, neither a sexual assault kit nor fingernail clippings were collected. The investigation team also declined to test the contents of the bottle of tequila that Tamla had brought that evening. Representatives for the investigators have publicly stated that this is not common practice, but is typically done when foul play is not suspected. the autopsy report presents its own set of curiosities as well. According to the autopsy from the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, Tamla showed blunt force trauma to her head, neck, torso, and extremities, including abrasions of the face, 4 different types of hemorrhages in the skull and brain, dislocation of the right wrist, and cuts on her arms and legs. She also suffered a broken neck and laceration of the right ventricle of the heart. Tamla's legs were found extended behind her, with both feet pointing to the right, and her right arm close to her body. Her left arm was found extended and bent at the elbow. There would almost immediately come questions as to whether the injuries to her hands and arms could be defensive wounds. This would suggest that there was an altercation of some sort that took place that night. In fact, the incident report shows that the initial theory was that Tamla has experienced a fall not from the deck, but from the ground. The report notes that the landscaping edging matched scrapes on Tamla's shins. While speaking with police almost 2 weeks later, Stacy Smith, who attended the party that night, doubted that Tamla could have fallen from the balcony. "I don't get it at all," Stacy told the police. "I mean, I've been on that deck like a million times, I've looked, and I've tried. And I don't understand." Diane Calovares, a friend of Tamla's, also had trouble believing the version of events presented by the police. "I just got several inconsistent stories," she said of her interactions with the group of women. "The accident theory just doesn't make sense. Not when everyone who was there said she was fine." Then, something even more suspicious happened. In February 2019, Barrera, who was a parole officer, was fired from his job. According to a Forsyth County Sheriff's Office incident report, deputies took a statement from a local woman who alleged that Barrera had accessed her information via his police terminal and provided it to 5 individuals. Michelle Wynn Graves stated that she believes personal information about her home, work and cell phone numbers, home address, work address, and driver's license, along with information about her height, weight, and extended family, had been found on several court documents. Barrera has denied the allegations. In the midst of a social media frenzy in which the case was getting a massive spotlight, Ralph Fernandez, the lawyer representing Horsford's family, released a letter summarizing the findings of his own review of the evidence. He concluded that homicide is a strong possibility, pointing to the abrasions on Tamla's arms and hands that he believes could be defensive wounds. He also noted conflicting witness statements and issues with the initial investigation, including the mishandling of the scene where Horsford's body was found. Fernandez was also unsettled by the lack of autopsy photos, a practice he characterizes as unheard of and likely done at someone's direction. Fernandez and the police would engage in a public battle over the course of months before good news would come as a result. On June 12, 2020, just a few hours after Fernandez released his statement addressed to the 2 agencies, the sheriff's office announced that they'd formally asked the GBI to assume the case and open an independent investigation. Sadly, they concluded that investigation a year later and kept the same ruling. To this day, we don't have any answers to the questions surrounding Tamla Horsford's death.